The galaxy was old. Stars had burned and died, while others were still young. Civilizations had risen, fallen, and vanished into dust. Yet in this endless sea of light, order had somehow been built. That order was called the Supreme Council of 847 alien species. Each of the 847 species had fought their way to the top of the galactic chain. Some had claws and teeth sharper than steel. Others had minds that could bend energy, bend space, and even bend weaker wills. A few had ships so large they blocked out the light of suns. Every one of them believed they were strong, clever, and destined to rule. But they did not fight each other anymore. Not openly. Not since the Council was formed. The Council was a grand alliance, a place where the most powerful species could decide the fate of the galaxy together. They met inside a colossal space station, built around the dying core of a collapsed star. Its walls glowed faintly red, as if the star's final breath still lingered. It was a place meant to remind everyone that even stars can die, but the Council must endure. Inside the chamber sat 847 thrones. No two thrones were the same. Some floated, some stretched high into the dark, and some wrapped around the forms of their owners like living shells. Each throne reflected the culture and pride of the species it held. From these seats, the counselors looked down upon lesser worlds. They made laws, declared wars, and ended them just as quickly. They saw themselves as supreme. And perhaps, until that time, they truly were. The chamber was alive with sound. Alien voices echoed in strange tones. Deep rumbles, high screeches, metallic hisses, and even vibrations too low for humans to hear. The Council argued, as they always did. Some wanted to expand into the unexplored spiral arms of the galaxy. Others demanded new taxes on weaker species. A few debated whether to outlaw a new weapon that could crack moons like eggs. But beneath all their noise was a shared pride. They believed no other creatures in the galaxy could ever threaten them. It was at this moment that one of the younger counselors brought forward a report. The being rose from its throne, its form like a cluster of silver threads twisting in the air. Its voice was soft but carried power. Counselors, it said, our scouts have found something strange. The chamber quieted. 847 species turned their many eyes, ears, and sensors toward the speaker. A small world, the voice continued. A blue world, rich in water and air. Its name is Earth. Murmurs filled the chamber. Another counselor, this one with scales of green fire, hissed, another primitive? Why waste our time? The silver-threaded being lifted its voice. Yes, primitive by our measure, yet unusual. This world is home to a species unlike any we have studied before. They call themselves humans. The word carried across the chamber, bouncing from one translator to another, reshaped into 847 different tongues. Humans. The sound was new, sharp, and carried with a faint echo of danger. The Council listened as the report continued. Humans were young, far too young to be spacefaring. Their ships were small, fragile metal shells that barely touched the edges of their own solar system. Their weapons were crude, their science incomplete. By every normal measure, they should have been unworthy of the Council's notice. But there were details that disturbed the report. Humans survived where others would die. They thrived in heat and in cold, in desert and in ocean. Their bodies healed quickly. Their minds were restless, always searching, always reaching. They were violent, but also creative. They were small, yet somehow refused to stay down. One report told of humans climbing mountains taller than alien cities, without wings or machines. Another told of humans diving into the deepest oceans with only a mask of air. Another spoke of humans running across open plains for days, until their prey collapsed. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor, no wings. And yet they endured. They always endured. The chamber grew tense. One elder, whose body was a cluster of crystal shards, broke the silence. We have seen such things before. Many species show strange talents. But in time, they break. In time, they fall. Why should these humans be different? The silver-threaded being paused. Then it spoke the words that changed the mood of the entire chamber. Because these reports were not about their soldiers, not their leaders, not even their strongest. These were their ordinary people, their common citizens. If their weak can do such things, then what are strong? 847 voices fell silent. For the first time in many cycles, the council felt something they had nearly forgotten: curiosity. And with curiosity came a flicker of unease. The elder of the winged seraphids leaned forward. Its feathers shimmered with starlight as it spoke. "Send for more reports. Send scouts. We will know the truth of this Earth." Others agreed, but not all. Some laughed, calling it a waste of time. Others argued that no primitive world could threaten them. Yet the council voted. The decision was made. They would study the humans, test them, measure their strength against the might of 847 species. In the chamber of the Supreme Council, the fate of one small blue world was sealed. And so the story began. The Supreme Council did not wait long. Once curiosity had taken root, it spread like fire through the chamber. The 847 species wanted answers. What were humans? Were they truly different? Or were they just another primitive people waiting to be conquered, cataloged, and forgotten? So the decision was made. An experiment would begin. The first step was simple: observation. Alien ships slipped into Earth's orbit, hidden by cloaking fields and distortions of light. They studied the planet below, scanning oceans, deserts, mountains, and cities. They recorded human speech, human writing, human wars, and human peace. They measured everything: blood, muscle, brain activity, even the strange rhythms of laughter and song. What they found was confusing. Humans fought endlessly with one another, yet they also built vast networks of cooperation. They invented weapons that could shatter cities, but also medicines that healed broken bones and failing hearts. They were violent, yet tender, fragile, yet unbroken. The council grew impatient. Observation was not enough. If the humans were to be understood, they had to be tested. The second step was direct contact. It began with abductions. Small groups of humans vanished from isolated places, deserts, forests, oceans. Adults were taken first, chosen for their strength, intelligence, or leadership. Warriors, scientists, and explorers were brought before the council's researchers. The aliens expected fear. They expected panic. They expected humans to collapse under the weight of advanced minds and impossible technology. But that was not what happened. One human soldier stood tall before a chamber full of creatures beyond imagination. He was unarmed, his body bruised from capture, yet his voice did not tremble when he asked, "What do you want from us?" Another human, a scientist, stared at machines beyond her understanding, and instead of cowering, she asked questions, endless questions. She drew diagrams, scribbled theories, and demanded answers from her captors. The council began to whisper among themselves. These were not the reactions of a weak species. The experiments continued. Humans were exposed to conditions that would kill most other life forms: poisoned air, extreme cold, and crushing heat. They survived longer than predicted, sometimes far beyond the safe limits. Their bodies adapted. Their willpower refused to break. A warrior from the Crothan species remarked, "They are like weeds. No matter what ground they fall upon, they grow." Still, the council was not convinced. Many species had shown flashes of strength. Many had endured trials before falling in time. Perhaps humans were only slightly tougher than average. Nothing more. But then came the third step of the experiment, and with it, a turning point. The suggestion came from a quiet voice, almost ignored at first. A scholar from the insectoid tree raised his mandibles and said, "If you wish to know the heart of the species, do not test their adults. Adults are shaped by culture, by training, by habit. To see the truth, look at their young." The chamber stirred. The idea was unusual, even disturbing. Testing children was rare. Many counselors considered it dishonorable, but the council was not bound by human morals. Curiosity outweighed restraint. So a new order was given. Not adults this time. Children. The first group was taken from a small human settlement. They were no older than 3 or 4 years. Small, clumsy, and fragile, or so the aliens believed. They were brought aboard a containment vessel, placed in a controlled environment with toys, puzzles, and observation drones. At first, the aliens thought the experiment would be simple. Measure play, measure speech, measure development. Nothing dangerous. They were wrong. Within minutes, the toddlers began to cause chaos. One child discovered the wall panel controls and pressed them at random. Doors opened and shut, lights flickered, alarms blared. Another toddler threw food across the room, splattering an alien researcher's carapace with sticky paste. Two more began wrestling, their laughter echoing to the chamber like a war cry. The researchers panicked. They tried to restore order, but the toddlers slipped past their grasp, running in all directions. One climbed onto a console, another bit an alien hand, and a third simply screamed with such force that several species with sensitive hearing fell back in pain. The reports horrified the council. "This is not possible," one elder hissed. "They are only infants." Yet the chaos spread. In another lab, a toddler shoved a strange crystal into a power socket, causing the ship's energy grid to short out. In another, a child dismantled a delicate machine simply by pulling out wires, laughing the whole time. Attempts at telepathy ended in disaster. A psychic species tried to read a toddler's mind, only to collapse in confusion. Their mental field was flooded with strange images of cartoons, animals, and nonsense words. The psychic wailed, "It is too much," before fainting. 847 species had faced soldiers, assassins, and monsters. None of them were prepared for the storm of pure, fearless chaos unleashed by human toddlers. When the reports were finally read aloud in the council chamber, silence fell. One voice whispered, "If they're young or unstoppable, what are their adults truly capable of?" No one answered. For the first time in thousands of cycles, the Supreme Council felt fear. They had sought to test humanity. Instead, humanity's children had tested them, and the Council did not know if they could endure what came next. The alien researchers had expected weakness. They had expected fragile little creatures, crying and clinging to each other for comfort. Instead, what they received was a storm. The toddlers were not frightened. They were curious. They were bold. They were unstoppable. At first, the researchers believed the chaos was simply an accident. Toddlers were, after all, small and unaware of their surroundings. Perhaps the alarms and system failures were mere coincidence. But as the hours passed, it became clear. The children were not only surviving, they were winning. One child, barely 3 years old, had found a way to climb into the ventilation ducts. His laughter echoed through the ship as he crawled unseen above the heads of the guards. Doors locked and unlocked at random. The environmental controls shifted from desert heat to Arctic cold, confusing entire decks of soldiers. Another child discovered that alien uniforms had shiny badges. She wanted one. She pulled, she bit, and she screamed until the armored guard surrendered the badge just to make the noise stop. The researchers watched in disbelief as their advanced facility slowly turned into a playground, controlled not by them, but by human toddlers. An emergency meeting was called aboard the ship. "This is unsustainable," one officer growled, his tentacles twitching with frustration. "Containment has failed. They must be sedated." Another researcher shook their insectoid head. "We tried. Sedatives only made them more unpredictable." One child slept, then woke screaming and threw a chair across the room. The report was even worse than the incident. The chair had landed on the control console for the ship's navigation. The vessel had nearly veered into a moon's gravity well before an emergency override saved them. "They do not understand fear," a psychic elder said, his voice trembling. I reached into one of their minds. "There is no pattern, no logic, no restraint. Only raw energy. I cannot control them." The counselors listening to the report sat in silence. Fear began to bloom in their chests. The toddlers, of course, were not aware of any of this. To them, the alien ship was nothing more than the greatest playground in history. Hallways became racetracks for running games. Storage bays became forts. The engine room was an endless source of buttons to press, lever to pull, and lights to admire. One child dragged a glowing cable behind him, pretending it was a pet. Another dipped her hands into a container of glowing blue fuel, painting her face with streaks like war paint. And when the aliens tried to take their toys away, the The toddlers fought with teeth, fists, and screams so piercing that several guards simply dropped their weapons and fled. The situation escalated further when one toddler discovered the communication array. The child pressed buttons at random, sending bursts of sound and static across nearby star systems. Some signals were distress calls, others were declarations of war, and one was a broadcast of a children's song that repeated endlessly for 6 hours. Entire fleets were scrambled, believing the ship was under attack. 2 neighboring empires prepared for battle, thinking the signal was a threat, all because a toddler had wanted to hear funny noises. Back on the station of the Supreme Council, the reports grew more unbelievable with each passing hour. The elder of the crystalline shard slammed a jagged fist against the table. This is an outrage. Our most advanced ships cannot be undone by infants. But the evidence could not be denied. Every system failure, every disruption, every cascade of errors, all trace back to human toddlers. These are not mistakes, one quiet voice observed. This is nature. They are explorers. They are destroyers. They are unstoppable chaos. 847 species had mastered war, peace, science, and art, yet none had faced a foe so relentless, so unpredictable, and so fearless. The breaking point came when the toddlers staged what could only be described as a jailbreak. The children, left in a containment room with toys, began stacking them. Blocks, chairs, even food trays, piled one atop another. The aliens thought it was play, but the toddlers were building a ladder. Within an hour, 3 of them had climbed high enough to reach the ceiling grate. They pushed, they kicked, they screamed. The grate gave way. And then, like tiny invaders, they disappeared into the vents. By the time guards arrived, the room was empty. The toddlers had escaped. What followed was chaos across the entire ship. Toddlers ran through control rooms, scattering food and toys. One released a cage full of experimental animals, which then joined the madness. Another discovered the ship's fire suppression system, spraying foam across half a deck. The toddlers even found the throne chamber of the ship's captain. He returned to find his seat covered in sticky handprints, his prized ceremonial blade bent in half, and one toddler asleep on his cloak. The captain, a veteran of 100 wars, simply stood there in silence. He did not know whether to scream, fight, or surrender. By the time the council received the final report, their chamber was silent. The officer delivering the message spoke with hollow eyes. We cannot control them, not with weapons, not with drugs, not with reason. They simply do not stop. The chamber stirred with unease. If these were the young of the species, what would the adults become once they matured? The Supreme Council had believed they were supreme. But now, a doubt crept into their thoughts like poison. Had they finally met something greater? The answer was still far away. But one thing was already certain. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and it had never been more dangerous. The escape of the toddlers was not the end. It was only the beginning. When the containment room was breached, the alien crew believed the problem could still be controlled. After all, these were only small creatures, barely able to speak. Surely guards with weapons and armor could herd them back into place. But the guards had underestimated the one force in the galaxy they could not fight: unpredictable chaos. The toddlers spread across the ship like wildfire. One group found their way into the hydroponics bay. The aliens had carefully engineered the space to grow rare plants from across the galaxy. To the toddlers, it was simply a jungle gym. They pulled vines, stomped on flowers, and threw glowing fruit at each other. A crop that had taken 50 years to cultivate was gone in less than an hour. Another group discovered the waste disposal system. With giggles and screams, they climbed onto conveyor belts and pressed glowing buttons, flushing entire compartments with refuse. One toddler found an emergency override lever and yanked it so hard the ship's recycling plant shut down completely. The vessel that had once represented the Council's perfect order was being dismantled by children too young to understand what they had done. The most dangerous incident happened in the engine chamber. 3 toddlers crawled through the ducts until they fell directly into the reactor room. The engineers rushed to stop them, but the children were already pulling wires, pushing buttons, and banging tools against delicate machines. One child picked up a glowing crystal rod, waving it like a sword. Another climbed onto a coolant pipe and jumped up and down, laughing as alarms blared. The third simply sat in the center of the chamber, smearing food paste on the reactor core. The engineers screamed warnings. Weapons were drawn, but no one dared fire. Even the smallest mistake could trigger a chain reaction that would destroy the entire ship. And so, the toddlers ruled the engine room. The ship's systems began to fail. Doors opened at random. Shields flickered in and out. Navigation scrambled itself into nonsense. The captain ordered his crew to restore order, but every attempt ended in failure. Guards were bitten, scratched, or simply outmaneuvered. Advanced restraint fields were overloaded when toddlers pressed random panels. Tranquilizer darts worked only briefly before the children woke. Even louder and more destructive than before, the mighty warship, flagship of the Council's research fleet, was being brought to its knees by a handful of human toddlers. On the Council station, updates came in bursts of disbelief. Hydroponics destroyed. Engine chamber compromised. Navigation scrambled. Toddlers cannot be contained. Each report struck the chamber like a hammer. Counselors shouted, argued, and demanded explanations. How could creatures so small bring down a vessel built with the knowledge of 847 advanced civilizations? One voice cut through the noise. "They do not need strength," said the elder Seraphid, its wings folding tight. "They are a storm. They do not follow patterns. And that is why we cannot stop them." The words left the chamber unsettled. For thousands of cycles, the Council had survived by predicting threats, analyzing strategies, and planning outcomes. But humans, especially their children, did not fit into any prediction. The toddlers, meanwhile, had discovered the weapons deck. To them, it was a wonderland. Rows of cannons, racks of rifles, glowing grenades, all treated as toys. One toddler pulled the trigger of a plasma rifle, sending a beam of energy into the ceiling. Sparks rained down. Another climbed onto a missile rack, bouncing up and down until the safety locks gave way. The missile slid forward and nearly launched before panicked guards slammed the controls shut. The toddlers laughed as the guards screamed. For them, it was all a game. The final disaster came when a toddler pressed a sequence of buttons on the command deck. By pure chance, or perhaps fate, the child activated the ship's communication system. A message went out across space, carrying not the voice of a captain or a general, but the high-pitched squeal of a toddler singing nonsense words. Dozens of fleets received the broadcast. Neighboring empires panicked, believing it was a code. Some prepared for war. Others sent ships racing toward the signal, all because a child had wanted to hear their own voice echo through the speakers. Back aboard the ship, the captain finally broke. He was a hardened veteran, his carapace scarred from centuries of battle. He had fought in wars that spanned galaxies, commanded armies that crushed rebellions, and faced weapons that could shatter worlds. But nothing had prepared him for human toddlers. His voice shook as he sent his final report to the Council. "This vessel is lost. Not to enemy fleets, not to rebellion, but to chaos we cannot contain. I request evacuation." The Council chamber was silent after the message ended. 847 species, supreme rulers of the galaxy, could not defeat a group of children. In the quiet that followed, the crystalline elder finally spoke. "If these are the young of the species," it said, each word heavy as stone, "what then are the grown?" The chamber trembled with unease. No one dared answer. For the first time in their history, the Supreme Council realized there might be something in the galaxy they could not conquer. Not armies, not fleets, not even weapons, but toddlers, human toddlers. And deep within the broken ship, a child yawned, curled up in a pile of stolen cloaks, and fell asleep. The alarm still screamed. The crew still panicked. But the toddler dreamed peacefully. For him, the greatest battle in the galaxy had only been playtime. The chamber of the Supreme Council had seen many crises. Wars between empires, the rise of machine rebellions, the collapse of stars that swallowed whole colonies. But never in its long existence, had the chamber echoed with such stunned silence as when the captain's final report ended. "This vessel is lost. Not to enemy fleets, not to rebellion, but to chaos we cannot contain. I request evacuation. The words played again and again in their minds. The most advanced ship in the research fleet, armed with weapons that could break worlds, had fallen to creatures who did not yet understand numbers higher than 10. Toddlers, for several heartbeats, measured differently by 847 species, but still felt all the same. No one spoke. Finally, a voice broke the silence. This must be a fabrication, hissed Counselor Vesh of the Scale Dominion, his emerald body quivering with disbelief. Our enemies seek to shame us. No species, no children could achieve such destruction. The silver-threaded scholar who had first raised the matter of humans tilted its glowing head. And yet the data is clear. We have live feeds. We have collapse systems. We have fleets scrambled by nonsense signals. This is no fabrication. This is truth. The chamber erupted into chaos. Voices collided in a storm of fear, rage, and confusion. We should destroy them now, thundered a council with tusks like blades. Burn their world before they spread. No, countered another, its body a swirl of living smoke. If they are this dangerous as children, imagine them as allies. To fight them would be suicide. They are primitives, shouted Crystalline Elder, shards glinting under the red light. Their technology is nothing. They cannot even leave their own solar system. And yet, whispered the insectoid scholar, they have already left their mark on us. Do you not see? We are afraid. The chamber grew louder and louder, 847 species arguing at once. It was less a debate and more a storm of beings who had never known true fear now forced to face it. Reports continued to pour in. The hydroponics bay, destroyed. The engine chamber, inaccessible. The command deck, overrun. The captain himself, missing, his last sighting showing him seated on the floor while a toddler tugged at his antennae. The entire fleet was in chaos. Dozens of rescue ships had been dispatched, but the toddlers moved faster than the response teams. Every corridor they entered became unusable. Every machine they touched broke down. Entire decks had been abandoned. And still, the toddlers were not tired. They screamed, they laughed, they cried, they fought, and the most advanced crew in the galaxy could do nothing but run. At last, the High Speaker of the Council raised her many hands and slammed them against a great gong at the center of the chamber. The sound rang out like thunder, silencing the uproar. Her voice cut through the chamber, calm but edged with fear. We are the Supreme Council. We are the masters of the galaxy. And yet we are undone by children. This truth cannot be denied. But the question remains, what shall we do with it? Her words settled heavy in the air. The first proposal was eradication. Counselor Vesh of the Scale Dominion hissed again, louder this time. This is a threat unlike any we have faced. If such chaos is left unchecked, these humans will grow into a storm that sweeps us all away. Their planet must be destroyed, burned to ash before it is too late. Several species agreed. Fear drove them to speak of extermination. Entire civilizations had been wiped out before for lesser reasons. Humanity was still primitive, still vulnerable. If the Council acted now, Earth could be erased with one order. But others resisted. The silver-threaded scholar rose again. Consider what you propose. We have seen humans endure poison, survive extremes, and now overwhelm our strongest systems. Even if we destroy their planet, will they not endure? Will survivors not scatter among the stars? And if they remember us as the ones who struck first, what vengeance might they take in centuries to come? The chamber fell quiet again at those words. Vengeance. It was not a thought many wanted to imagine. The second proposal was containment. Let them grow, suggested the elder crystalline shards, its voice like breaking glass. But let us surround them, monitor them, guide them. We will keep them small, confined to their blue planet. They will never rise beyond their place, and thus they will never threaten us. It was a tempting idea. Humanity was still limited to their single world and small moons. With enough force, the Council could trap them there, ensuring they never touched the greater galaxy. But one voice of dissent rose again. Containment will fail, the insectoid scholar warned. We have seen their young slip every net. Climb every barrier, break every wall. What cage can we build that they cannot break? What fence can hold the storm? No one had an answer. The third proposal was alliance. The Seraphid Elder spread its wings, shimmering with faint starlight. If they are this strong, if even their children bring us low, then they are not enemies. They are future rulers. We should bow to them now, before the day comes when we have no choice. Let us join with them, guide them, and earn their trust. When they rise, they may remember us as friends. The chamber erupted once more in protest and laughter. To ally with primitives? To bow before them? For species who had ruled the stars for millions of years, the idea was unthinkable. And yet, the seed of doubt remained. As the arguments raged, a messenger arrived from the research fleet. His voice was trembling, his eyes wide. "Counselors," he said, "the children have reached the council's own chamber aboard the fleet ship. They carry crowns, weapons, and banners they have stolen. They march as if they are rulers." The chamber froze. Images filled the air, projected from the fleet's surviving systems. The counselors watched as toddlers stumbled to the captain's chamber. One dragged a ceremonial banner across the floor. Another wore a crown, far too large, slipping over her eyes as she laughed. A third pounded on the captain's throne, as though it were a drum. 847 rulers of the galaxy stared at the sight, and none could speak. The panic spread beyond the chamber. Across the galaxy, whispers grew. Fleets intercepted the nonsense signals the toddlers had sent, and rumors spread among the stars. Merchants whispered that the Supreme Council had been defeated. Soldiers muttered that a new power was rising. Even lesser species, long oppressed, dared to hope. If the Great Council could be broken by children, then perhaps they were not as supreme as they claimed. The council was crumbling. For hours they argued. Eradication, containment, alliance. But no matter the choice, the truth was clear. They were afraid. The fear ran through them like a sickness, a truth they could not erase. At last, the high speaker rose again. This matter cannot be ignored. We have seen the strength of humans, not in their soldiers, not in their leaders, but in their children. If such is their beginning, then what will their end be? Her voice grew quiet. We must decide. Will we destroy them now, or kneel before them later? The chamber fell silent once more. For 847 species, there were always answers, always certainty, always control. But now, for the first time, the Supreme Council knew only panic. The council chamber was quiet, but not with peace. It was a heavy silence of fear. For days, no decision had been reached. 847 alien species, all once proud and certain of their supremacy, now sat in paralysis. Every time the debate began, it ended the same way, in shouting, in arguments, in panic. And always, the reports kept coming. The toddlers had not stopped. Even after the fleet ship was abandoned, recovery crews reported chaos. Systems were still scrambled, laboratories were ruined, and soldiers refused to re-enter certain decks, muttering of phantoms. Those phantoms, of course, were not ghosts. They were recordings of laughing human children, preserved in ship systems the toddlers had somehow corrupted. Their laughter echoed across decks like a haunting battle cry. The Supreme Council, masters of war and order, were still afraid. The High Speaker called for calm. "Enough," she said, her voice trembling through the chamber. "We must face this truth. Humanity is not like the others we have studied. They are not prey. They are not allies to manipulate. They are something new, and we must decide how to meet them." Her words hung in the air like a blade. The first counselor to respond was a crystalline elder, shards glittering under the dim light. "Humanity must be destroyed," it said coldly. "Already their children overwhelm us. Imagine their armies. Imagine their fleets. Do you not see? If we allow them to rise, they will tear this council apart. We must strike before it is too late." Others nodded. Fear made them cruel. Images of toddlers in control rooms, climbing over thrones, laughing as fleets scrambled in confusion. All of it burned in their minds. To destroy Earth seemed logical. It was easier than facing the storm that was coming. But then another voice rose. "No," said the silver-threaded scholar, the one who had first brought Earth to the Council's attention. Its filaments pulsed with steady light. "You do not understand. Destruction will not save you. If we burn their planet, survivors will scatter. They will crawl through ash and ruin, and still they will rise. They are creatures of endurance. They will never forgive. They will never forget, and they will never stop." The chamber trembled with unease. A counselor of the aquatic Toddler rose next, water glistening along its translucent skin. "Then let us cage them," it said. "Containment, as was proposed. We will block their skies, surround their system, prevent them from reaching the stars. They will live and die upon their blue world, never knowing the wider galaxy." The seraphid elder, feathers glowing faintly with starlight, shook its head. "You think cages will hold them? Have you not seen their children? No lock can bind them. No wall can stop them. They break barriers without knowing they are barriers. What do you think their adults will do when they learn the truth?" The aquatic Toddler fell silent, its watery form rippling with uncertainty. And so the third proposal was raised again. "Alliance," said the seraphid elder firmly. "Not destruction. Not cages. Alliance. Friendship. If we cannot defeat them, then we must walk beside them. If we cannot stop their rise, then we must ensure they rise with us, not against us." The chamber filled with whispers. For many, the idea was unthinkable. To bow before a primitive race? To offer friendship to those who had humiliated them? But the seraphid continued, wings spread wide. "Consider this. They are still young. Their fleets are small, their reach limited. They do not yet know their own power. If we stand with them now, if we guide them, then perhaps they will remember. And when they grow, they will not destroy us. They will protect us." The argument was dangerous, but it was also hopeful. And hope was something the council had forgotten how to feel. The debate stretched on for hours. Eradication, containment, alliance. But each proposal carried its own terror. Destruction might fail. Containment might break. Alliance might mean surrender. And then the chamber froze as a messenger arrived with new footage. It was a recording from the abandoned fleet ship. The video showed a toddler, small, messy, covered in food stains, wandering into the council chamber of the ship. The child carried a ceremonial crown, far too large, dragging it along the floor. He stumbled to the center of the chamber, placed the crown on his head, and sat down in the captain's throne. Around him, alien banners lay torn and scattered. The crown slipped over his eyes. He giggled and clapped. 847 species stared at the image. The toddler looked ridiculous, yet also terrifying. A child, seated upon a throne meant for rulers. It was no longer theory, no longer debate. It was a symbol, a prophecy. "This is what awaits us," whispered the insectoid scholar. "This is not chance. This is destiny." Even their children claimed thrones. The chamber filled with unease. One counselor broke the silence, voice trembling. "We cannot fight this. If even one of these humans survives destruction, they will rise. If we cage them, they will escape. If we ally with them, we admit weakness. What is left for us?" The high speaker lowered her many hands. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "what is left is humility. Perhaps for the first time in our long history, the council must accept we are not supreme. Perhaps we must accept that we are the ones who must kneel." The word shook the chamber like an earthquake. 847 species who had ruled the galaxy for millennia were being asked to admit weakness, to kneel before a race barely crawling into space, to bend before creatures whose children could not even form full sentences. And yet no one laughed, because they all knew it was true. That night, the council chamber remained lit. No species left. No one slept. They argued. They whispered. They prayed in their own ways. But deep down, the decision was already made. Humanity could not be destroyed. Humanity could not be caged. Humanity could not be ignored. The only path was respect. The only path was fear. The only path was alliance. When dawn came, though dawn meant little on a station orbiting a dead star, the high speaker struck the gong once more. The chamber fell silent. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were heavy. We, the Supreme Council of 847 species, declare a new truth. Humanity is not to be touched, not to be harmed, not to be tested again. From this day forward, they are protected. From this day forward, we will treat them not as primitives, not as prey, but as equals and perhaps one day as rulers. The vote was called. One by one, the species raised their voices, some in anger, some in fear, some in reluctant respect. But the result was clear. The motion passed. Humanity was reconsidered. Across the galaxy, orders went out. Fleets were recalled. Science vessels erased their records. Surveillance drones were withdrawn. And in every archive of the Council, a single warning was etched in bold letters. Do not underestimate humanity. Do not engage with their young. Do not provoke them. The galaxy had changed forever. Back on Earth, the toddlers who had caused the chaos were returned quietly to their families. They remembered nothing of their time among the stars. To them, it had been only strange dreams, dreams of shiny toys, glowing halls, and funny creatures who never stopped yelling. But the Council remembered. And from that day onward, every time a counselor heard the faint echo of a child's laughter, their hearts trembled, for they knew the storm had only just begun. The decree had been made. The vote had passed. Humanity was no longer just another primitive world. They were no longer ignored, no longer dismissed as an afterthought in the chronicles of the Supreme Council. From that day forward, Earth was marked with a warning, untouchable. Yet even after the vote, even after the orders were given, the chamber of the Council remained restless. Because it was not only fear that haunted them now, it was something deeper, something that none of the 847 species had felt in countless ages. It was humility. For millennia, the Council had believed themselves the highest expression of intelligence. They had bent empires to their will, controlled trade, manipulated war and peace alike. They had seen themselves as gods among the stars. And then toddlers had broken them. Not soldiers, not fleets, not weapons. Children, creatures who barely knew language. Infants who toppled systems designed by the oldest minds of the galaxy. The humiliation burned. The fear lingered. But within both lay a strange respect. The High Speaker called the Council to order one last time. "Let's be clear," she said, her many hands spread in solemn declaration. This was not an accident. This was not chance. This was a truth revealed. Humanity is dangerous not because of their weapons, but because of their nature. Even their smallest are unyielding. They endure. They adapt. They conquer without trying. What then will they become when they are ready? When their strength is guided? When their storms are focus? Her words weighed heavy on all who listened. The crystalline elder spoke next, its shards glinting with faint light. They frighten us. They humiliate us. But perhaps they teach us. Have we not grown complacent? We have ruled too long. We have forgotten struggle. We have forgotten unpredictability. And now the children of humanity remind us of truths we buried. The silver-threaded scholar bowed its luminous head. Yes, the lesson is simple. Strength is not found in order. It is found in chaos. It is found in the will to rise again and again, no matter the fall. Humanity embodies that truth, even in their infancy. Reports continue to flow in long after the fleet ship had been abandoned. One described how a toddler had managed to dismantle a restraining field generator using nothing but a toy block. Another told a child who, after hours of screaming, had driven hardened soldiers into retreat simply to escape the sound. And then there was a most infamous account. A toddler who climbed onto the captain's throne, worn the crown of command, and laughed as if the galaxy itself belonged to him. These stories spread beyond the chamber. Across the galaxy, lesser species whispered them like legends, tales of the untouchables, the humans who even as children could defeat the mighty. And with each retelling, the legend grew. The council debated how much of the truth to reveal. "Do we tell them?" asked the Lori envoy, its watery form trembling. "Do we let the lesser species know that we were undone by infants?" "No," answered the Seraphid elder, wings glowing faintly. If they learn the truth, they will laugh at us. Our authority will collapse. But we cannot hide everything. Rumors spread already. Better we control the story. And so the council chose carefully. They erased many records, but they left fragments. Enough for whispers. Enough for fear. Enough so that when the galaxy thought of humanity, it did not think of weakness. It thought of danger. For humanity itself, life went on unchanged. The toddlers were returned home, memories blurred, their strange adventures fading into dreams. Parents embraced them, never knowing the chaos their children had unleashed across the stars. Nations quarreled, wars simmered, discoveries advanced. Humanity remained as it always was. But unseen, the council watched. Surveillance probes circled Earth at a distance, careful never to approach too closely. Reports were filed daily, tracking humanity's every step forward. When humans reached further into their solar system, council watchers whispered warnings. When they built stronger weapons, the council debated late into the night. Always, the same question lingered. How long before they come for us? The lesson of the toddlers began to shape policy. Armies trained differently, preparing not for organized fleets, but for unpredictable swarms of resistance. Engineers redesigned systems with redundancies, knowing that a single child pressing the wrong button had once undone them all. Even political strategies shifted. Where once the council relied on order and fear, they began to study chaos itself, because they had no choice. Yet even as they prepared, they knew the truth. It would not be enough. Nothing could ever fully prepare them for humanity grown. One by one, species who had argued for destruction began to fall silent. The memory of chaos was too strong. Every time they considered extermination, the same thought returned. If this is their beginning, what will their vengeance be if we fail? Containment was abandoned as well. Every barrier ever built by the council had eventually been broken. To believe humanity would remain trapped was to believe in lies. Only alliance remained. But even alliance was not truly alliance. It was survival. It was the only path that left hope. The High Speaker delivered the final address on the matter. Her voice echoed across the chamber, and the recording would be played in whispers for centuries. Let it be remembered. Let it be carved in every archive. Let it be taught to every ruler. Humanity is different. Humanity is dangerous. And we must never forget the lesson they gave us. Not through war, not through conquest, but through children, through the chaos of their young. They showed us what we truly fear. They showed us what we lack. And they showed us what will come. Her many eyes closed. Fear the child, she whispered, for the parent is worse. The vote was final. Earth was declared untouchable, not out of mercy, not out of love, but out of survival. From that day forward, the humans were given a new title, whispered in secret by 847 alien species who had once called themselves supreme, the untouchables of the stars. And so the galaxy changed. Merchants spoke of Earth with trembling voices. Armies adjusted their strategies, always leaving room for unpredictability. Even the youngest species, those still crawling into the void, began to look upon humanity with awe, for the lesson of the toddlers had spread everywhere, not through propaganda, not through decrees, but through fear. On Earth, children laughed and played, unaware of their power. A toddler clutched a toy spaceship, smashing it against the ground with gleeful destruction. Another scribbled on walls with crayons, declaring their own little kingdom. To parents, it was mischief. To teachers, it was energy. But to the council, watching from the dark, it was a reminder that those small hands would one day hold real ships, that those wild imaginations would one day redraw the stars, that those fearless screams would one day rally fleets. And nothing, not 847 species, not 1,000 fleets, not all the wisdom of the ages, could stop what was coming. The galaxy had learned the lesson. Strength was not in claws or fangs or ships or crowns. Strength was in the fire that refused to be tamed. Strength was in the chaos that never ended. Strength was in the smallest humans, who played without fear, who broke the unbreakable, who conquered without knowing.